In this lesson, we'll discuss our design problem, and we'll also have a conversation about what exactly dynamic components are. Alright, so welcome to our course in working with dynamic components in SketchUp. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope you feel the same way. Today what we're going to learn is how to go and take modeling in SketchUp one step further. Not only are we going to be creating geometry to create an object, but we're going to be applying information and parameters to create a flexible model, but also a model with behaviors and different options as far as design are concerned. So that brings us to our design problem here. So what I have in place here is my small little modular home, and I just placed this little section here. So if you go to any corner here, go to this bottom corner and click on it, it'll open up the section view here. So basically what we need to do in this house here is we have some custom bookcases we actually want to, one, build, and then also place throughout our model. But each one of these spaces has different design requirements, which is why we're going to have to apply some parameters so we have some flexibility. Not only for this project that we're working on here, but the great thing about dynamic components is I can save it and use it for other projects down the line, or I can save those components with others or share those with others. So let's grab our tape measure here and let's go ahead and measure our first opening. So anywhere we see a recessed area, that's probably going to be where our bookcase is. So we know that the ceiling's going to be flat, so our overall height for all three of our bookcases is going to be 10 feet. So there's really no need to measure that again. But we do need to know that we are going to have another height of 5 feet. So we want to have two height parameters or attributes that we're going to be applying a little bit later. One for 5 feet and then one for 10. Now, when we take a look at depth, if I click here and then click in this corner, I've got a depth of 1'6" here and a width of 5 feet. So we're going to have those parameters as well. And in this large bookcase, which is probably going to be used to house maybe a library of some sort, we can click on here and we get the width, and that width is going to be 15 feet as well. And then if I click here to here, it's going to be 2 feet. So I see I already have two different depths, 1'6", 2 feet, 5 foot width, and a 15-foot width. So go ahead and go to your arrow tool here or your select button and right click on your box here, your view. Let's just go ahead and reverse that. So go to reverse, and it's going to reverse your view, and it's going to let us look at the other wall so we can see our third design option. So grab your tape measure tool. So let's get this depth. So we'll go from here to here, 1 foot, and our width 10 foot, and we know that the height is 10 foot. So now we know we have three different options as far as our width, 5, 10, and 15. And as far as our height, 5 and 10. And then as far as our depth, 1 foot, 1'6", and then 2 feet. So let's go ahead and click on that and right click and go ahead and erase that section view. We really won't need it again. If we want to, we can apply it again later. But now we're basically going to be working outside here to create our model. But before we begin modeling, let's talk a little bit about dynamic components. So as I mentioned, dynamic components are basically a way to build a model with information. It could be manufacturing information. It can be sizing requirements. It could be formulas and things like that to really control the behavior of your model. So you can kind of see the power in it. You can use something like dynamic components to solve a simple design problem like we have here. Now again, we're going to start off really simple because I think that trying to wrap your head around dynamic components and using formulas and variables and things like that to kind of control the behavior can be a little bit hard to wrap your head around at first if you're trying to tackle a large project. I feel it's really easy to get through it and think about it if you can work through a small project, and that's what we're going to do here. So to access it, basically we just need to come to our windows here, go to Windows at the top, come down here to Components, and once you're in Components, you can access your dynamic components within your 3D warehouse here. If you're here underneath this little Home in Model button, just to the right of that, click your down button, and it'll open up this little expanded window, and you can come to Dynamic Components Training. So you can either search by typing it in here, it'll take you to your 3D warehouse, and you can search that way, or you can access it here. So in our case, we have these little dynamic components. And I know they're dynamic components because, one, I searched directly for them, and it took me right where I need to go. But you see this little icon here on the bottom? If you ever see this little icon, this is a dynamic component. It'll tell you right when you hover over it as well. So that little green triangle with the two green squares lets you know that this is dynamic and there's some options. Some of them are configurable, some of them are flexible, some of them have nice array options, but this does a nice job of giving you a description of what exactly it is, who made it, and kind of how it behaves. And we'll get into how to create all this a little bit later. But this is how you can actually access it. So if I were to bring in one of these options here, so let's say we wanted to bring in this little pie piece here, and I just placed it over here. The main thing I want to get before we jump into modeling is I want to expose you to the two areas we'll be working with quite a bit. So if you right click on that model and you come down here to dynamic components and expand that window, you'll see two options. You'll see component attributes and then also component options. Essentially what we'll be doing when we're applying formulas and parameters is we're setting up or applying component attributes. And then we can then tell SketchUp a little bit later if we want those to appear and users to be able to access them via component options. And we'll get into all that a little bit later. So if I click on attributes, this will be the main window we'll actually be working on. So you can see the main component here is our actual pie piece. So if I double clicked on it, there's also subcomponents. And as you click through, each one of those subcomponents appears. And if I click out or click back on it, there it is. So our main component, you can see, is in this larger window. And then our subcomponents are indented just a little bit underneath that, just below. And everything's either going to work in inches or in centimeters. So that's something you want to keep in mind. So if you're putting in 12 feet, if you try to type in 12 and in the foot sign, it's only going to do 12 inches. You need to do 144 inches. So just keep that in mind. Everything we do in this space will actually be working in inches. So we can also apply functions. This is a nice way to access, to see all the little different, the various functions we can actually work with. Now we won't get into every single one of these. Every single one of these isn't necessary to solve our particular design problem, but this is how you can actually access it. Another cool thing is if there are formulas within your area here, if you click on this F of X button, it'll actually expose those. So in our design problem, a little bit later, we're actually going to work with creating custom as well as some of the predefined or attributes you will see here. But you can see here, anytime you see equals and then some text or some numbers, that's more than likely an attribute with some kind of a formula following it. And if you're applying information, if you're simply just wanting to put in a value, you could simply just put in a number. Or if you want to really control the behavior and a formula is required, you'll have to hit that equal signs first. But I wanted to expose you to all this first before we just jump into it and modeling it. I wanted to really kind of discuss it before we go, so you can think about it and you're exposed to it just a little bit before we start trying to create geometry and jump through all these windows. So again, we're going to be creating our main component, our subcomponents, and then within our subcomponents, we're going to be working with some of these attributes here, which if you come here and click on that, you'll see any ones that appear here are your predefined attributes, and then we'll also be working with our custom. So I'll expose you to both of them. That way, when you walk away from this course, you'll feel empowered because you know how to work with some predefined and also some custom attributes. So enough with the discussion. I'm ready to start doing some modeling. So let's go ahead and get rid of this guy. I'm going to go ahead and erase that. And in our next lesson, we'll actually jump into our model here, get our hands dirty, and we'll start modeling out our bookshelf. And we'll basically start from the bottom piece and kind of work our way around throughout all the components. So I'll meet you in the next lesson where we'll start modeling our bookcase.